could be missing the orange line.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the September 7th, 2022 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, Chair. As this is a hybrid meeting involving both in-person and remote participants, I'll read the following statement into the record. This is to formally advise that as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations, signed into law on June 16th, 2021. The Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room, Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, 02664. The public is welcome to attend. Remote access provided at the meeting is posted on the town website at www.yarmouth.ma.us under the Agenda and Minutes tab by selecting Planning Board. I will begin by taking roll call. Brad Goodwin.
Present.
Susan Britta. Here. Will Rubenstein. He will be here. He's a bit delayed. Chris Vincent.
Here.
Jim Sabin.
Present.
Joanne Crowley, present. Seeing that we have a quorum, I'll now call the meeting to order. For remote public participation during the public comment period for this public hearing or at my discretion during this meeting, I will invite the audience to comment. Online audience members can use the raise hand button to notify the chair. Dial-in audience members should press *9 on their phones. All audience members will be muted until you are recognized by me to participate. Once recognized, audience members are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Oh, there's Will.
Is Will here? He is here. Yes, I'd like to recognize that Will Rubenstein is here. First on our agenda is public hearings continued from May 18th, June 15th, July 6th, and August 17th, 2022 for definitive subdivision 2936A and special permit number 116. I would now like to continue this concurrent public hearing on both of these requests and welcome the residents of Yarmouth who may be here in person or those who may be joining us remotely, as well as representatives from the applicant, Attorney Paul Tardif. You will all recall that the owner is the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River. The applicant is the Davenport Companies, 20 Main Street, South Yarmouth, 02664. The property location is an unnumbered lot on the south side of Route 6A between Concomsit Circle and Outward Reach and across the street from Hockanum Road. Assessor's map 125, parcel 39 is a 15.3 acre lot in a zoning residential R40 district. The applicant is seeking approval for a 14 lot single family cluster definitive subdivision plan entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan of Land of the proposed single family cluster development at Lot 2, Route 6A, Yarmouthport, Massachusetts, for the Davenport Companies, with waivers and a special permit for a 14-lot single-family cluster subdivision under the provisions of the Yarmouth zoning bylaw, Section 402. In your package, you will see that Mr. Tardif has provided an agreement for extension, requesting a continuance of these hearings to our January 18th, 2023 meeting. I don't know if Mr. Tardif he is joining us. Good evening, Paul. Could you tell us a little bit more about the request for the extension for 2936A, as well as the new preliminary subdivision 2936B that the Davenport Companies has submitted to the town and that is currently under review?
I will. Thank you very much. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
And for the record, I'm Paul Tardif and I represent the Davenport Companies. When I was last before you on August 3rd, I believe it was, we were still working on the new plan. And so the additional extension was to today, and with the thought that this would be the time when we would withdraw this plan and move on with the next one. After a little more consideration, we want to get a feel from the board members at the next meeting and going forward with either neighbors or other departments to see if that plan is going to work. So it was a change basically to say, instead of to withdraw this without prejudice at this time, because we've been at this one since March, to waste all that time if the other plan doesn't work, we thought it would be wise to just ask for the extension to go into January. We have filed a new preliminary plan, and we are on the agenda for September 21, I believe, to start the process with that plan, so we can show you what we've done with the road and the lots and a few other changes. So that's the purpose of this request for a continuance tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tardif. Any questions from the board? No questions from the board? May I have a motion then to continue the hearings on definitive subdivision plan 2936A and special permit number 116 to our January 18th, 2023 meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? I will take a vote. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Chris Vincent,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Tardif. We look
Thank you.
forward to seeing you on the 21st. I would like to reiterate your comment, Paul, with regard, the Davenport companies have submitted a preliminary subdivision, 2936B, with a modified layout that includes access off of Route 6A further to the east, a redesign of 10 of the 14 septic systems to be located outside of the impaired Bass River Mill Pond watershed area, and more landscaping. These plans are currently out for staff comment and can be accessed on the town website through Kathy Williams, our town planner. The planning board will be reviewing this preliminary subdivision 2936B at our September 21st meeting. Although it is not a public hearing, we will welcome and appreciate public comment. Thank you, Mr. Tardif. We'll see you on the 21st.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, zoning amendments for the special town meeting. Included in our agenda materials is a September 2nd, 22 memo from Kathy Williams on possible VCOD Village Center Overlay District housekeeping zoning amendments for the fall special town meeting, which including draft red line edits to section 414 and a draft article with the explanation. Kathy, if you wouldn't mind, you and Mark maybe can walk us through the memo and let us know what's new. I think most of what we asked to be incorporated at our last meeting happened, but you've, on reflection, you've added some more. So why don't you walk through us with that?
I think if there's two things in your packet, as Joanne mentioned, there's the actual article, which might be somewhat difficult for people to understand because it just is changing very specific sections. But there's also a red line version of section 414, which is the VCOD zoning bylaw. The first thing that's a little bit different than what we talked about at the last meeting is shown within the zoning article, and it's related to the use table. Right now, duplexes or two-family dwellings are not allowed in the VC1, VC2, VC3, or VC4, except for in the VC1 and VC2 if it's top of shop. We've had some inquiries from people as to why duplexes would not be allowed. Having a duplex, if you go to 3 units or more, you have to have a sprinkler system. So a lot of people are interested in keeping costs down and having duplexes and laying that out on the particular property. So what's being presented here is actually changing the use table to allow for duplexes with no restrictions to top of shop, excuse me, in the VC1 through 4. Or the board may want to consider limiting it to just the VC2, which is our residential zone, and retain that footnote 41 for VC1, which would require it to be top of shop. So the way it's written now is it would be allowed in all 4 VC villages, but it's kind of up to you guys on to discuss.
Okay, so this is new from our last meeting, this adjustment to section 202. So I'd like to go around and see if we have any comments. May I start with you, Jim Saban? Any comments on this particular one on duplexes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Why are we saying no two families in, is the RS 40, is that residential 40? Is that like Old Bass River, Old Main Street area? I see, it appears to be a
RS40.
residential area that was saying no to two families. Is that
It's our
correct?
most restrictive residential zoning district, and it's part of that Bass River Historic District. So it is along the Bass River.
And Old Main Street is correct as well. Correct? And what is, can I ask, is there a rationale as to why we don't want to allow duplexes in that area?
That's existing right now in the bylaw. The only thing that would be changing that's being proposed here is in a VC1 through VC4. But the one thing about duplexes, the bylaw right now requires you to have twice the minimum lot size in order to have a duplex. So I'm not sure how many RS40s would apply, but I think that that's more of our historic area. And the idea was maybe that's not the appropriate location for duplexes. This is the only thing I can think of.
And with your explanation about twice the lot size, I don't think there's probably any lots that would qualify of existing lots. But, okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin? Any comment?
Yeah, just, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I go shopping, sometimes when we're building these massive housing complexes on 28, I end up having my ice cream melt before I get out of the store because people just want to bark at the fact that they don't want more housing on 28. That being said, I think we need more housing. So I'm betwixt a rock and a hard place on whether to open this up all the way between 1 and 4 or just keep it the way it is. I'll listen to the board's comments.
Thank you. Mr. Rubenstein?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I feel very similarly to Mr. Goodwin when it comes to our housing challenges. I will put that in my mystical air quotes. If it feels like an opportunity to at least allow the possibility to make a very small dent in a very big problem. And it would, I'm trying, I don't want to look back on this decision and say, well, gosh, we could have made it 4% easier, right? And to me, if we can make it easier for folks to help get creative, even albeit in places where we're cognizant of the impact of multifamily houses, however that's mitigated by the lot size, my inclination is to say yes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. Well, so you're okay with all of the VC 1 through 4 districts? And you are as well, Mr. Goodwin? Or is it just the VC2 that you would prefer?
No, again, we have an incredible housing crunch in Yarmouth. I wish it was somewhere else besides 28, but it is what it is. So I could go 1 through 4.
Okay. Okay, Chris, Mr. Vincent?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can't go back and remember why we didn't allow duplexes. This was some time ago that this was written, but I have no problem allowing them in the, I think in the VC2, which was the residential part of this. Anyways, so I think it's a good idea. We knew when we were drafting this original article that we were going to come back to it and change it as we saw the need. So I'm okay with it. I did have one question though, was that the duplexes would require adherence to the VCOD design standards, of
Yes.
course. So we're still going to get the look that we want. And if it helps us get some additional residences that we need, then I'm all for it. Thank you.
Ms. Britta?
Just like to echo a point that Chris made, not knowing why duplexes were prohibited in the first place. I think Kathy's probably the only one here that has got the memory, or maybe Chris, but yeah, I'm sure there was a very good reason why duplexes, and I'm loath to sort of cavalierly change it without understanding why they were prohibited in the first place. Maybe it was, I just don't know.
There was just so many decisions being made
Right.
then that sometimes a decision was made just kind of with the information that was available at the time. I'm sure the board didn't know that, triplexes require a sprinkler system, whereas duplexes don't. That might have played a role in the decision-making process.
And Kathy, if we were to allow them in the residential, the VC2 district, they would require a site that's twice the size of,
No, that's under the underlying zoning. This is the Village Center's overlay district, so the densities that are allowed. It's just, this is another form of multifamily that would be allowed on the site. So you may find that you do have a multifamily building with maybe, 10 units in it. Maybe there's a couple duplexes, or maybe you find that you have a development where it's all duplexes, because then they don't have to have a triplex, which is kind of nice because you only have one wall next to your neighbor versus the center one, which would have the two neighbors. And then you don't have that added expense of a sprinkler system for a
well, I'm
triplex.
not worried about a developer's expense, and quite frankly, cutting into his profits. Was saying that they don't want to put in life safety measures because it costs them money, I think is not quite as noble a motivation as we probably ought to be considering. I have to tell you, not knowing why they were originally prohibited, I think there's probably a very valid reason why they, maybe there isn't, but I couldn't support it.
We'll never know, Susan, unless you want to go back through all of
Records.
the records and all of the videos.
How did
in
this,
order
what is the genesis of this? What has happened that made this pop up as a issue? What
We've
happened?
had developers come to us asking why we can't do duplexes. And a lot of it is, it's very costly to do housing of any type, especially if it's not subsidized in any way, because especially now with all of the different costs, but there are some people who are willing to do some development and they're like, well, I want to do it, but I want to actually be able to financially be able to do it and not having to do sprinkler systems. I mean, we don't have
So if a
individual
sprinkler
sprinkler systems in our individual homes. So
I have to tell you, if a sprinkler system is a make or break decision for a developer trying to do something of this magnitude, we probably ought to be not doing business with them anyway. I just am loath to think that we're going to make a zoning change because some developer doesn't want to invest in sprinkler systems, quite frankly. I'm not in favor of it. I maybe in the residential zone, maybe, but in general, I know, I can't support it. I just think I think it's worked so far. Are there examples, Kathy, where people just have refused to do it because they can't get this change?
I think there's a potential of a project that I know of where that could potentially be the case. Yes.
For the cost of a sprinkler system for how many duplexes? I mean, how many,
8 units total.
8 units total?
But you got to understand, how many VCOD projects have we had?
Yeah, I
None.
think that's the real
That's the real
thermometer
If I
here.
may,
We have none.
There's a chance, if there's a chance for redevelopment on 28 the way that we want it and get the site standards that we want, which they'd have to adhere to, then I'm all for it. I don't care. And I bet you 90% of people that drive by one of these wouldn't know if it was a duplex or a triplex because they have no idea. So it's going to look the same regardless. Does it serve a purpose of getting housing? Then fantastic. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think from my comments, I think the win-win here is that control element of the VCOD design elements that have to be adhered to so that we would get something better looking than an empty lot. And we've got a few of those on 28. And some of the hotels motels that are still vacant and undeveloped. Perhaps duplexes might be able to work there. So I'm in favor of the change. I think we will hear from the public. Again, our review here is to put a draft article together so that we can get it in front of the public and see what they think. We'll have a public hearing on it, and there may be many people who share your opinion, Susan, and then we will do our deliberations on that. But I think what I'm hearing from the majority of the board is that we should, in this draft, include all of the VC districts for this draft and get it out into the public and see what we hear.
Even the historic
think-
district?
No. It can't be in the RS. It can't be in the RS 40. Old Bass River on Old Main Street, Pleasant Street.
So it's mainly 28.
Yeah, it's just the VCOD all along the 4 districts along 28. It's not in any other neighborhoods.
Well, I would offer the 28 looks the way it looks because we make decisions like this. So these ad hoc, out of context decisions without thinking long range about.
If I may, because I was part of the people
Yeah,
that wrote this, and
me-
the reason
yeah.
we got to where we are now on 28 is because there was no planning prior to us having a planning board. So it just grew on its own without any guidance. And now trying to give something guidance after it's already been in place is a very difficult thing to
And I
do.
support that.
And that's why we write this, so that it can bring us the change that we're looking for. It's as simple as that. So that's how it got to where it is today. It wasn't because of writing these bylaws, it's because we didn't have any.
And then once we wrote them, the expectation was we would live by them.
Right, and we will. So we also knew when we wrote this that we would come back to make changes, because there's no such thing as a perfect set of planning rules. And we also knew, and you can go back and read the tapes, because we said this all the time, it's not going to be an overnight success. This is something that's going to take 30 or 40 years to undo.
It's already been 10 years. I mean, we wrote this in 2012.
Right?
So-
So now that it's starting to percolate, that's where they come in, and that's when we make changes. It's an elastic document. And I'd like to hear what Brad has to say. I don't think he's weighed in yet. Have you, Brad?
Yeah, I did. I don't, I'm a little bit like Susan, that I don't want more housing on 28, but 28, we've done this for 10 years. We got nowhere with it. So let's make it a little bit of a change. And if we get some duplex out of it, great. I like the way this board thinks in terms of its design standards. Adding Mr. Saban to the group only makes us stronger because of his knowledge of the town. I think it's really a positive step forward. Am I thrilled with it? No. Is it a positive step? Yes.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Certainly, Susan.
Could the amendment be drafted in such a way that if we grant the, if we agree to the, could we add language that says the design standards for this cannot be waived? In other words, you have strict adherence to the design standards. If you do a duplex, it has to be strict adherence to, in other words, sort of a trade-off. You get the duplex, but you've got to really adhere to the very strict. In other words, I don't want
I think-
developers rolling in here and saying, okay, now we can do duplexes and I want a waiver of this, this and this.
Well,
Is
you,
that possible, Chris? What do you think?
Well, I would say that they have to adhere to the design standards that are in the document, like everybody else
Yeah,
that
but
would
they ask
develop
for
under them
waivers.
do.
So how do
But
we
anybody
control-
could ask for a waiver, just not necessarily a duplex. So you're suggesting that we should just now reform this so that nobody can make any changes to this at all if they
No,
come
no,
in?
but I'm saying if we do
and-
the duplex, if we grant the flexibility for duplex.
But that's my point. You can't just single out a duplex and not everybody else,
Why not?
because you can't.
Well, we're waiving, but see, we're
It
waiving
wouldn't
them
pass
into.
muster with the state's
we're
attorney general.
But we're waiving them into a duplex opportunity. Can't we
We're
get?
not waiving them. We're changing a zoning bylaw.
well, it's-
I think the
It's not a
design,
waiver.
the design standards would remain the same. And I think we can talk a little bit further about whether we want to eliminate that option for waivers. And that was one of the things I mentioned in my memo, so that anything that needs to be changed would be through a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, except for height and maximum front yard setback, which would be a variance. I agree with Chris 100%. I think most people driving by Route 28 aren't even going to know whether something's a duplex or a triplex, because they're not going to see that far back into the lot. What's going to be facing Route 28 is going to have to be that front door, that introduction to the public realm, so to speak, the sidewalk that goes out to the street. That's what you're going to see, whether it's a duplex or a triplex or a quadruplex or whatever. I don't think you're really going to notice that from the street. It needs to look just as nice as everything else in the VCOD.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Saban.
thank you for recognition. I don't think there's anybody in this town that's been more opposed to the residential redevelopment of Route 28 at the expense of the business community than myself. But I think that there's a balance, and not only can we have a balance, but we need to recognize that we are in a crisis with regards to housing, and we need to get creative as to the ways we go about creating more housing. The restrictions as far as lot size, that may change when we start putting sewering into some of these areas, and we may want to have those discussions as well. But I don't see the harm of allowing duplexes when we're in a crisis for housing to begin with, particularly when any of those would have to meet design review standards. So, I think it's just a no-brainer. Let's make it happen and do whatever we can to, as Will said, bits and pieces are the solution to the housing problem. We're not going to do it with one big piece of cake. We're going to have to do pieces and pieces and find different ways to attack this. And this is one that I think is a good idea.
Okay, so we'll go forward with the rewrite, including the 4 district scale.
Yeah, and then we'll see what
We'll see
the
what-
public says.
I'd like to, I thought that it should be in the residential
Just-
area.
So
That
just-
was,
are we
that was my
saying
suggestion,
VC1
just to
through
be
4 or
clear.
Just VC2.
Just the VC2, the residential part. That was
Okay.
my suggestion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Chris, I apologize. So
It's the
VC2,
best spot for it.
Okay.
If somebody
You
thinks
have the
otherwise,
history
let
with
me
it?
know.
It might make Susan feel better that we're not allowing it in all the villages. We're concentrating it in the village that we designated as
Is
residential. Would
residential.
that Matter?
yeah, any other comment? Moving it away from all 4 to just the one, VC2? We okay with that? I'm seeing your head shaking.
Jim Sabin.
Yeah, again, when even the chief of police says, I got a problem finding places for my men and women to live.
Fair enough.
If there's, I don't think Mr. Nicanello is going to sell us 30 acres and turn them all into duplexes. I can't think of a large lot. Maybe the Brandywine Hotel, which is up for sale for $2.6 million across from the Pancake Man, something like that. But I think well-made duplexes or triplexes or quadruplexes right there would do better than the rundown motel that's there. So why don't we let the developers have a free shake at it, going from South Sea Ave all the way down to where is it? Old Main. Let's give them a shot.
I can see that too, Brad. Yeah, I'm behind that. I'll listen to both arguments. We got plenty of time
Yeah,
before we
get
have to
and
vote
we'll
on
hear
this.
from the
So.
public. So again, we'll do all 4, Kathy,
For the draft that is going to go out to the
Yeah.
public.
for this
Yeah,
draft.
with
Yep,
this.
Right.
for this round.
Yeah.
Great.
I also know that the lot sizes, from what I recall, they're all cut up and very small and very different. So it's not easy unless a developer was going to come in and knock some properties down and combine lots, that we'd really get things that we wanted. So that's a consideration as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. With regard to the changes for section 414, Kath, you want to run through
Sure.
those two?
I think it's probably easier to go through the red line version at this
Sure.
point, because the only thing that's really different was that article. We'll talk about the explanation in a little bit. So if you're going through the red line version, you don't get to a red line item until you get to page 9 of 30. And this is where we had talked about, this is exactly how it was presented at the last meeting, where we're indicating that fill in excess of 4 feet as measured from the natural grade at the street shall require a permit from the building commissioner per section 302.1 of the bylaw, versus requiring a variance if you're filling more than 4 feet. So that's exactly how we discussed last time.
Okay.
You want me to just keep
Yeah,
going?
keep going.
Okay,
Sure.
sorry.
Yep.
And then
I
the,
interrupt with questions as we go. Okay.
on the next page, on page 10, we had talked about, because a lot of the VC1 is in a floodplain, you might need to change some of the grades in order to meet the building code, that maybe we provide 25 feet of maximum front yard setback if you're in a FEMA flood zone. So both those things need to be only in the VC1 and only if you're in a FEMA flood zone.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next edit is shown on page 12 at the bottom. And this is where we're basically indicating that it had just listed some dimensional relief that could be done through a special permit. We wanted to provide a little bit more flexibility, but still have some control over it by having more things be allowed through a special permit from the ZBA. So the special permit granting authority, which is the ZBA in the VCOD, may provide relief from provisions within the VCOD bylaw through a special permit, except for relief from building height and maximum front yard setback, which would require a variance. The special permit granting, and then the rest of it will remain. The special permit granting authority shall consider the criteria listed under section 414.3.3 special permits when reviewing any special permit application for relief. One of the criteria there is also the VCOD site plan review decision from the planning board. So that would go to the zoning board of appeals as well. And then just the things that, and then just identifies the things that the special permit granting authority would not have jurisdiction over, things that are already precluded within the bylaw for non-conforming existing, and also dimensional requirements for flag-shaped lots in footnote F. That's just kind of saying those aren't things where you need relief from. And that's basically what we had talked about at the last meeting. I think I had erroneously canceled out the sentence about the special permit shall consider the criteria listed under the special permits when reviewing the application. I just put that back in. I didn't mean to eliminate that. And then the next change is when you get all the way to page 20, 414.8, this area is highlighted in yellow, and I discussed this more in my memo. I mean, we had been talking about allowing some type of waivers to be given by the planning board through the VCOD site plan review process, just for the design standards and the architectural and site design standards. But I was thinking about it more thoroughly, and I'm not sure that it's prudent to require or provide this type of relief through the VCOD site plan review process, because it's not a public hearing. There's no abutter notification, and the decision doesn't get recorded at the registry of deeds. I've had some preliminary discussions with town council, and he kind of felt that it might be possible to include this. But I think since we're already including the additional relief that's allowed through special permit, we don't want to cause any confusion as to who provides relief. Is it the planning board because it's a design thing, or is it the ZBA? So at this point, I would recommend taking out altogether the highlighted yellow proposed change in the bylaw. I think it might be overreaching at this point.
The planning board is the VCOD projects get reviewed by the planning board, right? With the final authority on that. Is that right?
The review authority on it for design review authority.
Okay, so I think that's what they're talking about. When they come to us for design review, at that point, because we are the planning board, we can waive or alter one of the requirements because we're the planning board. So why couldn't we do it during that review
I think it
process?
puts you in somewhat of a bad position of somebody pushing, well, I think you should be giving this waiver, and then you guys have to make a judgment call on it. I think for the changes that we're trying to make it at fall town meeting, this might be too aggressive. And I'm not 100% sure, once further discussions are held with town council, that it'll pass muster. So
Because you're saying that because the design review is not a public hearing.
it's not a public hearing. There's no abutter
Well, then,
notification.
okay, gotcha.
And
So
to
that's the
change all
reason.
of that is changing the site plan review process, and I don't think you want to do that. That's making it more complicated than what you want.
No.
If somebody can't do this section, and I think we've kind of clarified some of the sections within 414.8 that have been problematic on other projects, and we'll continue to discuss those as we go on, and allowing for more relief through special permit. I think that provides the flexibility while maintaining the design standards and the general look of what we want to have in the VCOD. So that would be my recommendation is
So
to take that out.
yeah, so let's do just a quick rerun on this. This language, the sentence that's in yellow highlighted, we inserted last week. Remember, this does not appear in the zoning bylaws now. We said, let's put it in. And now what Kathy is recommending upon further review and thought, let's not add that. So the area that's highlighted would be eliminated. I'm okay with that. And any comment on that or concerns about that? We're going back to what it originally said, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Kath, sorry for the
No,
interruption.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So on the next page, on page 21, we had talked about the sidewalks being difficult, of having people being required to construct a sidewalk along Route 28 next to an existing sidewalk. So this has been amended a little bit based on the comments from the board. Where there are existing sidewalks on Route 28, the design of the VCO development shall provide accommodations for future expansion of a 6-foot wide sidewalk onto the property along the entire frontage of Route 28. But when no sidewalks exist, the developer shall provide a minimum 6-foot sidewalk on the project property along the entire frontage abutting Route 28. Right now, that last thing applies to everybody, even if there's already a sidewalk in front of your property. And then eliminated some of the specificity with regard to the type of sidewalk, understanding that most of it's going to probably be done through a Mass DOT project and is the typical that would be done.
Do we give them, we don't give them any guidance here. I remember we talked about it, about what style, because we wanted it all the same. And we did say Mass DOT. Are we going to need to put something in here to give them direction on
I think
what it
the
should be? Because I think
Mass DOT is going to do granite curb with paved.
asphalt, right?
With asphalt, right. It's not ideal.
Right, but if that's what they're gonna get, and that's what a sidewalk is, then okay. I just want them to all look the same, so.
Asphalt's probably the lowest grade that you would get anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not ideal. Be nice to have concrete or stamped concrete or whatever. I just think to try and require that for such a long stretch for developers is going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. It's really something that's mostly usually done within the public realm as a public project. On page 23, under entranceways, we had talked about for commercial use, the street level frontage shall be primarily devoted to entrances, shop windows, or other displays, understanding that non-commercial uses don't need shop windows or other displays, like the pump station, or if we had a public restroom or something along those lines. The next item under fenestration, which are windows, this is a new edit. And this was done somewhat because of taking out the waiver requirement. Right now, it's very strict, and it says the width to height ratio of windows or bays and facades above the street level shall be a minimum of 1 to 2. I think we softened it a little bit to say bays and the facades above the ground floor level shall typically be double hung, except where acceptable design features or dormer variations may require a different ratio or style. Give a little bit more flexibility. What if somebody wanted to have a bay window, literally a bay window on the second floor? This rigidity with it would preclude it. Doesn't mean you couldn't have 4 windows, double hung windows together, but it would preclude things like a bay window. So this is just not being quite so rigid with regard to the window requirements on anything but the first floor. The second floor is and above. And again, it gets back to, acceptable design features. So it's somewhat going to be the architect and you guys deciding whether it's an acceptable design feature. Down at the bottom of the page for dormers, we clarified that edit based on some good comments from the planning board about defining what pitch roof lines of 50 feet or more in length, dormers or other architectural elements shall be used to break up the roof surfaces. So that helped clarify when that would be required. On page 24, the roof articulations, we kind of combined 1 and 2 and didn't be so specific with regard to the village. So it reads now, roof models shall include such styles as gable, gambrels, hip roofs, mansards, and flat roofs. Where flat roofs are proposed, these roof lines shall have decorative cornices, parapets, or other architectural elements that extend from the roof edge to provide a decorative and articulated edge and screen roof-mounted equipment. Going to keep going unless page 26. This has to do with buffers along residential areas that also happen to butt up against a waterway. So this does allow for, in addition to breaks in the buffer that are allowed for pedestrian and bicycle crossing, it adds buffers. Breaks in the buffer may also be incorporated into the design to provide for water access and or water views. So that's as discussed at the last meeting. And then the last edit is on page 30 with the signs. And this does have a little bit of an edit. We had talked about eliminating the reference to freestanding monument or structured signs that for some reason wasn't allowed in the VC one, but there was also a lot of specificity with regard to the size that would be allowed for a freestanding sign. I think it's best if we keep that consistent and say the size of the freestanding sign shall adhere to the sign bylaw that everybody else has to adhere to. but still keep in the design elements in this section, like freestanding, you can't do the lollipop style pole. And then also if you can incorporate some type of landscaping or that type of thing around your sign, then that's desirable. I don't think it's good to have the sizes in two different locations in the bylaw. It makes it confusing for Mark when issuing permits and that type of thing. So that's it.
Any comments from members of the board? Okay. So Kathy, you've got enough to run with in terms of,
So I'll basically, it looks like kind of what I have in here is acceptable for the draft for the public hearing, but I will take out that section on the design standards. And then the only other thing is I do need to provide an explanation. I don't know if anybody had any comments on the explanation. The XXX with the yellow is that section that we just talked about removing, rather than trying to identify. So if anybody has any comments on that, that would be good to know.
I'm okay with the way the explanation, it may change as a result of public hearings. So it's a placeholder.
This is kind of the basis that will be used for the only reason I mentioned is be used for the public hearing notice that needs to go into the paper.
Yep.
Because our public hearing will be on the 5th, and I'll have to notice that before our next
And,
meeting.
and when would that be going out?
Next week for publication, probably, 2 weeks prior.
Okay.
We have a little bit more flexibility because we have the Cape Cod Times now, which isn't as rigid with regard. I could, put it in on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday with the old register. So there's a little bit more flexibility, but just want to be sure that we properly notice that.
I'm okay with it. Any other comments on the explanation? Okay. Next up on our agenda, well, Kathy, why don't we just go through on special town meeting, the balance of the calendar.
Thank you.
Let's just do that.
Yes, so I'm going to take these articles that we have here and make those minor edits, and I need to submit those to the town administrator's office by September 20th so that they can incorporate that into the warrant, which the final draft is going to be done by October 4th. I believe that the planning board is going to be on the October 18th Board of Selectmen agenda, and then on October 19th, the Finance Committee will provide their recommendations, and then by October 21st, the warrant needs to go to the paper. So I really feel like October 18th is the last meeting that the Board of Selectmen will have. We'll present our amendments, we'll present what happened at the hearing and any edits you guys had made based on the hearing, and get their input as well as whether they have any recommendations. We do have a meeting on the 19th, so I suppose if we had any minor tweaks or something, we might be able to do that and get that in. But the board, I think, is really only going to be able to make decisions on October 18th.
And again, our public hearing on this is
I'm sorry, October 5th.
the 5th, right?
Yep.
Okay. And the special town meeting?
That's a good one. It's November 15th at 6 p.m. at Matakey's.
November again, what, Kathy?
I'm sorry, November 15th,
15th.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on special town meeting? Okay. Let's move on to next on our agenda, our officer elections and committee assignments. We typically try to do this at our second meeting in September, but Kathy's good at prompting us, me in particular, that we should get this discussion going now because our calendar is getting pretty full as we enter the fall. So I wanted to start with, if we can knock off some of these tonight, I think that would be good. We can start with the officer elections. I'd like to start with those first. and ask if any one of us would like to be chair for the next term. I would like to be. Anyone else?
I think that that's a fantastic idea. So I'll second that.
Okay, so we need a motion, right, Kathy?
Madam Chair, so moved that you be chair again.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
I move that you continue as chairman another year.
And I second that.
Any discussion? Take a vote. Brad Goodwin?
Can't hear you, Brad.
Yep. Susan Britta?
Aye.
Will Rubenstein?
Aye.
Chris Vincent?
Aye.
Jim Saban?
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Passes unanimously. Next is vice chair. Do we have anyone who would like to make a nomination or who would be interested in being vice chair?
Madam Chairman, who is our vice chair?
Our vice chair was Liz Hartsgrove, and with her absence beginning July 1, we have not had a vice chair.
The clerk has been the de facto vice chair.
Which is Will.
Which is, yeah,
Will.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Is Will okay with being vice chair some more?
Will is okay with being the clerk, which I guess if we don't elect a vice chair means you get what you want. I
I
don't know.
nominate Jim Saban if Jim would like to do it. I tell you, Joanne doesn't miss meetings, so you're not. She's
Well,
good
thank
with
you,
the-
but I have a lot of pots in the fire with other boards, so I would probably not be your best choice to fill in. But Mr. Goodwin has ancestral knowledge, historical knowledge.
Mr.
And-
Goodwin's
and
got
it's
one foot
knowledge.
out the, Mr. Goodwin's got 1 foot out the door, just because I've got so much work at my church where a priest resigned on April 19th. Not that I remember the date, or the time, 7:35 a.m. So no, thank you.
Chris?
We can leave it open. We can leave it blank,
Mr. Vincent?
Nothing says we have to have a vice chair.
It doesn't.
I'm like, yeah,
It's unusual.
it's unusual, huh?
Madam Chair, if it please the board, if there's no heavy lifting, I suppose I could do it, but if we're fine with just leaving it blank, I'm fine with that too.
How about we could be co-vice president? Take half the load off you, Jim.
What are we gonna do? Rock, paper, scissors each meeting that Joanne misses, decide who chairs?
I think we should have a vice chair and it should be one person.
I think Jim would be great.
Okay, may I have a motion?
Take the motion.
I make a motion to nominate Jim Saban as the vice chair.
Second? Any discussion? Roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Chris Vincent,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
I abstain.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Thank you, Jim.
Well, Mr. Saban, if you're absent and Joanne is absent, I will gladly do my duty.
There we go. Thank you, Will.
And with that, I nominate Mr. Rubenstein as clerk.
Second, any
Second.
discussion?
I didn't mean it that way, but okay. Yes.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yes.
Well, years ago, remember, the clerk used to take the minutes, so I remember those days.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Again, roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Chris Vincent,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye.
And I would just like to say, Madam Chair, I would like to again publicly thank Kathy Williams for taking the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
I do have one other thing, and I didn't highlight this, but one of the other things that we always do is we need a motion from someone that would allow the chair, the vice chair, or the clerk individually to sign documents under the subdivision control regulations. That way, an A&R can be signed by Joanne. It doesn't have to be signed by everybody on the commission.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, we're going to compete for the second. Okay.
Will got it.
You'll have the language on that, Kath? Okay, great. Again, roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Chris Vincent,
Aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Okay, thank you all. Let's go to committee assignments. Let's begin the discussion with Will. I'm going to start with you because I know you've already given a heads up about your time constraints and level of participation you think you can dedicate to capital budget.
I mean, I'm certainly open to being in this conversation as a, you know, as a 6-person body. I don't want it to be about me. And I'm open to further discussion. I think I want to give some credit to Mr. Scott, who has dramatically changed the process, as I might have hinted at a few months ago. He couldn't do that in his first cycle, and I can't see Kathy because the recording went out, or the image went out, but hopefully she's nodding her head. But he has just greatly streamlined and made the whole CBC process a lot more efficient from the outside. I'm not sure if the time commitment is becoming any smaller. However, I have a slightly more open mind than I might have had 90 days ago, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
I will just like to say for the record that I have done 2 budget cycles, and I recognize that the first one was extremely compressed because of the COVID-19 situation. The second one was only slightly better, but Mr. Scott was just getting his feet wet. And I am cautiously optimistic about this third one. But I would like to remain open to the possibility if someone else has a hankering, I think would be the word, to replace me on the capital budget committee. I would certainly be open to other committees. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't mean to really put you on the spot, but you were the only member of the board, Will, that had expressed an interest in some change.
Thank you. I sort of expected the conversation to happen, maybe not immediately, but here we are. It's fine.
Yeah, we are. So any other interest on
Chairman?
that particular committee?
Madam Chair?
Okay, well, you're it.
Oh, I'd like to hear what Mr. Saban has to say first, though, just in
Oh, I'm
case.
sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm
It's
sorry,
okay.
Jim.
That's okay. Will alluded to the fact that we're a 6-member board currently. I'm wondering, is there any
Thank you, Mr.
movement
Saban.
on filling that other seat?
Thank
And
you.
if
That was
so,
what I
maybe
wanted
we
to
might
start.
want to hold off on some of these discussions till that person comes.
I don't think capital budget might be the best, unless this person happens to be particularly awesome on capital budget. It's a kind of a difficult one, but I did have some discussions with Pam Barnes in the town administrator's office, and Dorcas McGurran, excuse me, is the appointments chair, and she typically meets with people during the days on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we're going to see if we can't try with the chair to have interviews to
Sweet.
interview the 2 people who have provided talent bank forms. And I can certainly forward those around to everybody.
Yeah, if you could do that.
Well, I would say if I may, Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Saban, for bringing that up because it was something on my mind as well. The first capital budget committee meeting is Monday, September 12th at 4:30. So I'm guessing that we're not going to have a 7th member of this board at that point, A, and B, it may not make sense unless we really want them to not stick around to throw them right into the capital budget committee, Madam Chair. So I appreciate Mr. Saban bringing that sentiment forward, but it feels like the timing is not great.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me open the discussion for, we have our current assignments. I guess I'd like to know from each of you if you're willing to continue in those assignments, or you need to, you would like to, you have an expressed interest in another assignment. Will, we've covered you and capital budget. Are there any other committees that you are interested in possibly participating in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say I'm certainly curious about the future of the sewering of the town of Yarmouth, and I'm not saying that that's a smaller time commitment. In fact, it may be a bigger one than than the capital budget committee, or at least bigger and more intense. I don't know what I'm saying, but I am seeing quadruple of myself. Apologies that I got distracted. And the other one would be CPC, I would say, since I love committees that start with C and end with C. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Brad, you're on Community Housing now and the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah, Mary Wagan is the queen of holding meetings. So she takes a lot of time, believe me. I'd love to change. However, let's stay with the way they are. And I'll just keep grinding through Mary's emails and emails and emails.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
I'm happy to stay exactly where I'm at on the design review committee. I think it's a good fit.
Okay. Susan?
I'm fine.
Jim?
I have no committee assignment that I'm aware of.
You're on land disposition,
Oh, yeah, okay.
but not as the planning board rep. Do I have that as the planning board rep?
So I'm on land disposition as the planning board rep.
Right.
And Susan is acting as the drive-in site rep. I am the member at large of drive-in.
Correct.
Okay.
I want off.
Okay. Jim, are you okay continuing in that?
At what?
The land disposition?
Yes.
Okay.
And other than that, I don't know anything else I'm on.
And you're both on drive-in, right?
Yes, I'm the member at large and Susan is the planning board rep.
And you will continue at that as well?
Oh, yeah, till it's done. I ain't going nowhere.
Oh, good.
I
All
won't let
right.
him go.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Then that leaves me with filling in on CPC and RAC. And CEDC. For me, I wouldn't mind a change off of CEDC. And either I would continue with RAC or CPC. Will, I know you had expressed an interest in that as well.
It's okay, Madam Chair. I would certainly defer to you in that regard. But
Okay.
CEDC would interest me, except the problem is I'm not looking to add more committees.
Yeah.
So as it doesn't feel like anybody is willing to take the beautiful talisman that is the CBC. But it is what it is.
Yes, you've got to leave. I know. Thank you, Chris.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would actually be interested in the CEDC. Kind of something I started and would like to see them get some stuff done. So if I can be a thorn in their side, that's fine with me. But I think Will would be given first opportunity to decide what he'd like to do.
I appreciate that, but I mean, I'm certainly not, I'm certain, as much as I love all the work that I do on behalf of the planning board, I'm not looking to add a second committee. So it wouldn't seem to make sense for me to add on the CEDC. So I would respectfully decline that unless someone else was willing to step up for CBC. And that person, unfortunately, is not in this meeting right now. So
Okay.
I can stay where I am.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, Jim. You were talking about CPC or CEDC?
Well, you have, Madam Chair, a lot on your plate, and I'm trying to help alleviate some of that.
Yep.
So you had suggested that you'd like to step away from the Community Economic Development
That's
Committee.
correct.
So I would be willing, considering I have no other obligation to the planning board because
Okay.
I would be willing to do that.
All right.
To
That
be a
sounds
bug
good.
in
That
the
sounds-
bonnet.
That sounds good to me. That would be good. Thank you.
And Madam Chairman,
Yes.
might I suggest that when we get our new member, if they're interested in any of these committees, we offer them the ability to consider them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes,
Maybe they like capital budget.
Want
yes.
to remind Will that he did agree to be on the Open Space and Rec Plan Update Committee.
Yep. No, I did.
I got to put it on here, so I just wanted to.
No, but I have, and I wasn't not acknowledging that. It's more that I have not heard a single word about it. So,
Yep, I have an update I can give during staff update.
Okay.
okay, thank
So,
you.
I think we've got them all covered. I will just continue with CPC and cover those and RAC. RAC is losing another member. Kurt Sears has resigned from RAC as chair. And we have some upcoming public meetings, which I'm going to go through for board member notes. So I think I should just hang tight with Water Resources and CPC for now. And we will revisit all this when we get our new member. So we have a start.
I'm sorry, did Will say he was going to stay on capital?
Yes,
budget?
he did.
Yes, I guess at the end of all of this, when the smoke has cleared, I am still where I was. I would like to place on record, Madam Chair, that I do not intend to serve a 4th year on the CBC. So this will be my 3rd budget cycle, and I would like to say respectfully that this will be the last one.
Okay. So heard.
So I just need it to be out there so that we're not surprised when I do bring this up again in 10 to 12 months.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate that. Okay. Next up, meeting minutes. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of our August 17th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Again, roll call. Will Rubenstein,
aye.
Jim Saban,
Aye.
oh, Chris isn't here. Susan, Britta, Brad Goodwin,
I abstain.
abstain. Joanne Crowley, yes. Committee updates. Any committee updates? I guess you've got a committee meeting coming up, Will, you mentioned.
Oh, yes, the first CBC meeting will be on Monday, the 12th, and I want to again thank the assistant town administrator for providing some digital planning tools that I think he's bringing with him from his previous job, as well as just using some existing technology through Microsoft Teams, which I think will very much, I can't speak from the department head's perspective, but I can speak from the CBC's perspective, is really, so far, early returns are very high. Second thing is I did have a chance to take an official tour through the new Dennis Yarmouth Intermediate Middle School last week as part of the school building committee meeting. I'm still part of the school building committee. And it is quite simply stunning and will be a really terrific contribution to the town of Yarmouth for decades and decades and decades, including not just the education of 900 plus Dennis Yarmouth children and many jobs and all those other things, but the recreational aspects are really going to be fulfilling for the town. And as maybe more importantly, the new space for our town meeting, which I hope will be as soon as spring of 2023, if everything goes well, with occupancy in January for students, I think is really going to serve the town in a very positive way. And I hope all of you will take up the opportunity, probably in the early winter, certainly early midwinter, to go to any open houses and any opportunities to go through that building. Because as I've said before on the public record, the good guys won and good ladies. And it's an important thing to see where our money has gone and how it's been managed. It's under budget and it's on time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other committee updates that members like to share?
Just housing. We awarded some money to Habitat. They're going to start looking at the project right across the street, the old Bornstein project that we signed off on a permit, 2017, across the street from Town Hall. And we may have something else coming down the pike as well. So we're moving forward to try to help housing on Yarmouth, for Yarmouth.
So Habitat has picked up that that project?
Yes.
Oh.
We're
Great,
going to amend
great.
it. It won't be
Yeah.
exactly the same project.
Yeah.
They're going to amend it. Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's great news. That's great news. Anyone else? I have an update on RAC. There was a recent press release that was sent out through the town. We are setting up 4 meetings in various corners of the town to provide a public update of the status of the wastewater planning efforts. And the first one is Monday, September 19th at 5 p.m. at the Cape and Island Realtors Association on Midtech Drive, where we'll run through the 8 phases of the project, as well as give an update on the status of the various projects in phase 1, where contracts are being established and boundaries are being set up. So they will be once a month through the month of December at various locations throughout the town, more or less focusing on the watershed areas. So the meeting on Monday coming up the 19th will focus on Lewis Bay. Then we'll have one at the Cultural Center that will focus on the Bass River watershed. That's October 17th,
Cultural Center.
Cultural Center. And Monday, November 21st, will be at the Senior Center. And that one is focusing on the Parkers River watershed. And then we will have one on the 19th of December at the Yarmouth Fire Station up in Yarmouth Port. And one other, we had a CDC meeting on August 23rd, and the primary discussion had to do with the sand sculpture. We fund that through the Tourism and Preservation Grant, and it's expanded tremendously. We have 30 locations now, 29 locations throughout the town. And we wanted to get going on setting that up for next year, making sure we've got all the right pieces in place with the chamber. So we spent some time on that. And then we also have a revised charge of the committee that's related to how and when funds are distributed through the Tourism Preservation Fund, and what approvals need to be made with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. And interestingly, on, I think it was August 30th, the Board of Selectmen reviewed the charge and had a very lively discussion about it. So we will have a revised charge that we'll be looking at. This is of interest to you, Jim, as you jump in at the next meeting, where some clarification on delegation and who can award contracts and who can't is being kind of hammered out. So we'll wait to see what the final product is there. So that's what I have on committee meetings. Board member items.
Madam Chair, just for me, for the first time in probably 35 plus years, I'm going to miss the town meeting in November. So I apologize in advance.
Okay.
So
Madam Chair.
Yes. Jim.
So, Jim Saban, I have forwarded to Kathy a petition bylaw with regards to the accessory dwelling unit issue. There's a petition out there with over 100 signatures, and they would like to work with us rather than against us. As we all have discussed, housing is critical. We're in a crisis, and they have elected to put forward a petition bylaw to address our accessory dwelling bylaw issue. And I would like to suggest that we have them come to us and have a meeting. I think it's better that we work together to kind of hash out this ADU rather than a petition bylaw and fight it out on town meeting. I think we can find a common ground and get something done quite honestly, I think it's embarrassing that our town is one of three that doesn't, and you're all gonna tell me we have one, but we don't have an accessory dwelling bylaw that works. So we need to address that. There's a petition with over 120 something signatures. Kathy, I sent it to her. Maybe she can get it to everybody to look at. It's not our format, so it would need work. But I wanted to bring that forward and ask that we could put that on an agenda so that we can have that discussion with those that are in petition and find some common ground and get this done.
Okay, thank you. I did receive that late in the day, Mr. Saban, and I did take a look at it. And I'll work with Kathy to get something on a calendar where we have some room to begin discussion with this. We'll need to know who the petitioners are and who might be the key people associated with the petitioners group. We certainly won't be doing anything for special town meeting. I trust they're not going to try to petition at special town meeting. We certainly don't have any, we won't have any calendar time to do that.
You're talking about the town meeting in November.
Yeah.
I think-
So working towards some discussion with them as we can find room on the calendar, we will do that, absolutely. And it would be always best if it's a collaborative effort.
And Madam Chair, I apologize for not getting this to you earlier. Unfortunately, I had an accident and have a broken leg, so this has sat on my desk for a little bit of time. That's why I'm not at our meeting and won't be at any meetings for the next 4 months.
Oh,
But I can
did not-
Zoom.
I did not know that. I'm so sorry to hear that.
There she is.
Oh, my goodness.
Let me just clarify that it's clearly understood this is not going to be in November.
It's not November.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry to hear that, Jim. Well, again, we'll talk some more about this and see what we can work through on a calendar.
Yes, and I've shared most of this
Bring it to our
information with Kathy.
I feel better. Oh, my
Thank you.
goodness. Okay. Any other board member items? Okay, correspondence or any staff updates, Kathy, you want to?
Yeah, I sent everyone the approval from the Attorney General's office for the zoning amendments from annual town meeting. Any caveats they have on the short-term rentals is just their standard, just so that people understand that this is what they do and what level with which they review them, and also that it didn't conflict with the existing short-term rental regulations, the Mass General Law, Chapter 64. So we're good with that, and I can move on and edit the bylaw. With regard to the open space and rec plan update, we have gotten nominations for people from the Disability Commission, the Recreation Commission, Planning Board. There's another one, I can't remember. And then we're going to need to get a Conservation Commission member, but we do have a request for cost quotes out for consultants. And hopefully we'll receive some cost quotes by September 16th is when they're due. We've had some difficulty. Lots of consultants are very busy. So hopefully we'll get somebody who's willing to work with us on that. I just wanted to let everybody know that I have been talking with Mary Wagon about the housing production plan, and it looks like the formal planning board hearing will be on November 2nd. But she's also working to have the Community Housing Committee have a presentation on the draft of it, I believe, later this month. I'm not exactly sure the date. I think she was looking for the 28th. So we'll have more information on that meeting as well. I did receive, or will be receiving soon, but have not received a revised road application for the J-Mart. Attempting to take into consideration some of the comments from the public and the planning board. We do also have for the next meeting on the 21st an A&R in addition to the preliminary subdivision from the Davenports.
Kathy, the application for JMOD, is that dated? I mean, is that a timing issue?
It has not been formally submitted to me. For road projects, they need to go to site plan review team, which is staff, and I believe they submitted that today. And once they get the site plan review comments, then that's something that they include and submit. And I think we have 45 days to do that. So we're going to have, at some point in the next couple months, we'll have that come
Back in front of us.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a formal public hearing.
right. Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Next meeting, September 21st. Again, we'll be seeing, looking at the Davenport proposal. On that, do we have hard copies of?
I have hard copies and I'd be happy to put them in the bucket for
Yeah,
people if they want to
yeah.
pick them up.
Yeah,
I did include a link in the email I sent out on Friday because they're all on Laserfiche. Everybody can look at it on the town website. And if you have difficulty finding it, send an email to me and I will send you the direct clickable link. Unfortunately, you can't type in the link in Laserfiche. It doesn't work.
okay.
You have to
Madam
click.
Chair, may I ask a question about that?
Yes,
I understand that there's a potentially revised entrance on 6A as part of this resubmittal. Is there any way we can see a before and after, that we can see a comparison? I mean, I can do it myself. I still have the plans here at home. I just wasn't sure, because if I was in a butter, maybe one of the first things I might ask is, can somebody show me what this looked like back the last time we all met? And can somebody show what it looks like now? I don't know if this is helping, but that was the first thing that came to my mind.
well, that may very well be just a request we make of the Davenports when they present.
At the
that
preliminary
we have,
hearing.
That we have a comparison there of where was the old one and an
Yeah,
overlay. of
okay,
where the
so
new
we
one
could
is.
discuss that at the next opportunity with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very good point, though.
Because I feel like the abutters, I would just anticipate some of that and maybe see if we can get that to be put forth so that, the people most directly affected can have the information, the most comprehensive information as we go through the process. Thank you.
Okay. Any other topics or business we need to cover? We all set, Kath?
I'm all
Good, all right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Take a roll call on that. Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Jim Saban.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Get
Yeah,
well,
have a
Jim.
good- Jim.
Thank you all.
Welcome.
Good luck.